Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Supply Chain Risk Management Consortium's sixth in a series of webinars on the Prescriptive online supply chain risk and resiliency, a 90-day action plan tool, taking about 30 minutes of your leader's time to build a tailored action plan aligned to your business needs. We appreciate you taking the time today, especially with all the different events and that are going on around the world. And we hope that your family are healthy and safe. Again, this is the sixth webinar of our series, and it's our capstone webinar. And we'll be restarting this webinar series starting back in June if you missed any of the webinars. But of course, you can find the webinars on the EIG website, Consulting EIG, and soon to be on the Consortium's website, the SCRMconsortium.com website. Again, we look forward to you joining us in the webinar with the polling questions. Please do log in to pollev.com/Greg Schlegel 910. It's easiest to do on your cell phone app, and then respond to the questions there. My name is Jim Vries, founder, president of Enhanced International Group, and I will be the host of today's webinar. We also have Claire on the line here to help out facilitation of your questions. We welcome your questions throughout the webinar. Ask them as they come up. You don't need to wait to the end, and we'll take them as we can throughout the webinar and pace ourselves accordingly. Joining us with today, of course, is Greg Schlegel. He will be sharing his expertise as the founder of Supply Chain Risk Management. He's one of the original founders, and he was a former president of Apex, ASCM, very well known out there in the industry. And again, Greg founded Supply Chain Risk Management in 2010. And it has a book out there, the author of the book, Supply Chain Risk Management, an Emerging Discipline, when he wrote it a number of years ago. Greg, a few words?
You bet, Jim. Thanks, everyone, for attending and getting ready to talk about our passion, supply chain risk and resiliency. As Jim mentioned, I'm the founder of the organization. We'll talk about the consortium in a minute, but I've taught supply chain risk management for 10 years at Lehigh University here in the States. And I teach ERM, which we're not going to talk about today, enterprise risk management at Villanova. Spent 8 years as a supply chain executive consultant with IBM. Spent 35 years as a supply chain exec and practitioner, perhaps like many of you, for a couple Fortune 100 companies. And I've taught at 6 different universities throughout my career. So with that, I'll turn it back to Jim.
And Greg, I'm just going to let you keep going, buddy.
All right, not to worry. Sounds good. We said we'd give you a thumbnail sketch of the Supply Chain Risk Management Consortium. As Jim said, we're about 12 years young. We have, as you can see on the right, we have education members, consulting members, and software members. We're about 30 companies. That translates to about 1,500 supply chain risk professionals around the world. We've been growing tremendously. And many of these companies that you see on the right, they bring skills, tools, techniques, methodologies, and software solutions to help us identify, assess, mitigate, and manage supply chain risks. So that's who we are. Over on the left, what do we do? We have online education. We have 2 courses, culminating in a certificate. One is basic, one is in public healthcare, which we're very integrally involved. We do virtual training like this. Jim and I and the consortium members do about 3 webinars a month. We used to do classroom training. Remember those days, face-to-face? We're finally getting back into the university face-to-face classroom here in the States. Hope you are seeing that as well. We produce certificates and certifications in this space. We do risk awareness, mitigation, identification. We bring best practices, as Jim said, from the book. Book is still doing well out in Amazon. We coach companies. We help companies build their supply chain risk war rooms. We bring best practices in SCR&R, especially with some of the tools and platforms to help with visibility. And we're very excited because we have 2 new online assessments. One is the Prescriptive online down the bottom, which we're going to talk in detail today about the 90-day action plan using AI and ML algorithms. And the newest is supply chain management readiness assessment. And we can talk about that if we have any questions, but that's who we are. That's what we do. And essentially, I'll turn it back to Jim.
Thanks, Greg. And just a bit of background on Enhanced International Group. We're an exchange of experts to guide your transformation to provide self-generating and self-funding results. We have vetted over 50 consultants, consulting companies, and SaaS providers, and they are the leaders in their field, and they all focus on enabling your enterprise. EIG serves as that master integrator so that you have access to the best in class companies out there. You can look at it as a Swiss Army knife. We have, from a people, process, data, technology perspective, we are there to help you transform your company to where you want to go. Our thought leadership is a leadership expertise. We all have this leadership expertise, and our goal is to meet and exceed your expectations with customized, predictable, sustainable, and repeatable 90-day self-funding programs. So just kind of reviewing the bicycle slide, I like to call it. We like to look at it as on the right side, your strategy, and on the left side, the smaller gear is your execution. So one rotation in your pedal gear is going to result in many execution cycles, and we're all connected through tactics. So if you have an enterprise, we look at it from an enterprise perspective. If we have a strong enterprise solution from soup to nuts, you'll be able to go very, very fast. Otherwise, you become derailed. And that's what companies have, is we all have this ecosystem around. So we like to focus on gaining your momentum and your competitive advantage. So with that, I think we'll just go ahead and get started. Again, this is the 6th webinar. The dates that you see here are the dates of the webinars that we have already completed. And we'll share with you at the end of the webinar the dates of the new dates for the next set of webinars that will go through the 90-day action plan. Again, the 90-day action plan, we've been discussing that a little bit. Just share with you that it is a online survey. It takes about 30 minutes to complete it. We have hourly, or I'd say monthly reviews over the 3 months of once the survey is completed. So it's a total time of 7 hours. And then we offer 40 hours of virtual onboarding, collaboration, coaching sessions to coach you throughout the action plan that is generated by our ML algorithms. And the assessment asks you 3 perspectives, which we've covered in our webinars. Where are you? Who are you? And how do you operate? Which generates then that 90-day action plan. And again, what we would ask of you is a designated lead for the onboarding calls. Then you have a minimum of 5 to 8 stakeholders in a business section of your company. And then we generate the 90-day action plan. And then we have those checkpoint calls to confirm are the action plans aligned to where you need. We then generate what types of support you need for your company to execute those action plans. And then we have another check-in with your executive team. Did it work? And then, of course, a pulse check, and then our final what's next. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of what the 90-day action plan is. And because of COVID and because of the restrictions, this is all online. And if you want consulting face-to-face, we can talk about that too. But let's just go to the survey. Ranked in order the industry that you represent. We're just trying to get an idea of the who's on the line, and for some range, there it is. If you could enter in there, ranked in order, what type of industry you are in, because when we do the case studies coming up, we are looking to have you choose which industry to focus on. So our examples are in high tech, industrial, consumer packaged goods, electronics, software as a service, or if there's others that you have in mind, please go ahead and write it in the chat. So please do fill that out so that we can prioritize our upcoming order. Last time, I think we did CPG. If we don't hear too much, we'll probably just end up choosing one of the others, electronics or industrial, unless we hear something otherwise. So with that, we'll come back to the survey in a few minutes, but while you're filling that out in the Greg Schlegel 910, I think we'll just move on and kick it off with Greg.
You bet. This is what our agenda looks like, folks. So we're going to start with some compelling reasons to promote supply chain risk management to be a priority for your company. So we're going to start there. Then we'll talk about assessing the risks and talk about some key risk indicators and share that with you. We'll touch on some user feedback. That's what Jim was talking about. We have many cases across those industries where companies in an industry have gone through the 90-day process, and we want to share one or two of those user feedback. And that's why we were asking in terms of a frequency chart, who's on the call and what industries, and then we can branch out and maybe align a user feedback with the largest number of industry sector folks on the call. And then finally, we'll finish up with the 90-day action game plan. We'll provide you some graphical insights and complexions regarding the 90-day tools. So that's more or less our agenda. And we should probably just move forward. We said this section is promoting SCRM to be a priority for your company. So let's move on. And we'll talk about one of the compelling reasons to act. This is our point of view. So we'll start with something called the VUCA Landscape. You may or may not be familiar with it, but what does VUCA stand for? Well, the V stands for volatility. Let's give you a definition. This describes something that is liable to vary or change, sometimes very quickly and often for the worse. What is that? In our day and age right now, that is COVID-19 and government lockdowns. We're still, after 2 years, we're still all witnessing and living with lockdowns again across the world. So V is for volatility. U is for uncertainty. This is the state of not knowing or being able to rely on something. What is that in our landscape? That is demand and supply shocks. For the first time in 45 years, I've been in the business for a good long time, demand and supply shocks of severity are happening to all of us simultaneously. That's the nuance of COVID-19. C stands for complexity. This can be defined as something with many parts in an intricate arrangement. What is that? That, folks, is our global supply chains. We don't have linear supply chains anymore. We have network relationships, and they're global. And finally, A stands for ambiguity. Something is ambiguous if it's open to more than one interpretation. What is that? That is everything above, folks. That is what we're living with, all of us, in supply chain management for the last 2.5 years, the VUCA landscape. So with that, we want to talk a little bit more and share a little bit more in terms of compelling reasons to act. I agree, this is a bit dated. It's from Accenture, but we feel it's still relevant in this space. All right. This is Accenture's 2014 SCRM worldwide study. I want to share with you the headlines. The headline of this worldwide study came out and said, wow, 25% of the companies canvassed plan to increase investments of at least 20% in supply chain risk management in the next 2 years. So this is a while back. What were the findings? Let's take a look. Here they are. They found exemplar companies with near 100% ROI on their initial SCRM investments, whatever they were, demonstrated these practices, meaning what did they do to get near 100% return on investment, which all of us would kill for? Here's what they did. They made risk management a priority throughout the organization. They made a commitment to good risk management. Next, they centralized the responsibility for risk management. Many of the exemplar companies that we work with and we know are out there and do everything you will learn today and more, those exemplars have what we call centers of excellence for supply chain risk management. Second one. Third, investing aggressively with specific focus on end-to-end supply chain risk management visibility. One of the key elements of success and analytics, including what we advocate, scenario planning. All right. And then on the bottom, I'm not sure we have the McKinsey statement. McKinsey said it a little different, and it's more recent, but McKinsey's been doing a great job in terms of supply chain risk management because they can. They have deep pockets. They have a lot of resources. It's great. And they share the outcome of reports with us because they're friends of the consortium. Excuse me. They said on top of the bottom line losses, there's additional risk to a company of permanently losing market share to competitors that are what? Able to sustain operations or recover faster, not to mention the cost of rebuilding damaged physical assets. So with that, I mean, McKinsey's already said if you're better prepared and more responsive than your nearest competitor in a risk environment, you can gain market share. And I think we have another slide to further reinforce the issue of benefits to be derived in compelling reason. This is governance and compliance. These are some exemplar companies from an Aberdeen study a couple years ago. Here's what they found. They asked questions, and it was a GRC-ERM. GRC stands for Governance, Risk, and Compliance. ERM stands for Enterprise Risk Management. So these companies who were exercising the governance and compliance ERM approach experienced this. They said, we had a 34% reduction in risk value in the past 2 years. What does that mean? That's cost avoidance. That is due to better supply chain risk and resiliency practices. That is effectiveness. They also said we experienced 23% reduction in compliance-related costs in the past 2 years. What is that? That's cost reduction. What do we mean by that? Well, basically, the company has said they're doing more in risk management with less cost. So that's efficiency. So the folks who are exercising GRC, ERM, and probably good supply chain risk management are being both efficient and effective, cost reduction and cost avoidance. And also, these exemplars where they found out that they were probably 54% more likely than their competitors to systematically evaluate business processes, and 29% more likely than their competitors to conduct quantified risk assessments. What does that mean? That means you identify the risk and then you assess the risk using quantification methods. All right. So more on ROIs. We have, I think, one more slide. This is a good one. This comes from Aberdeen. Again, it's a bit dated, but Aberdeen here in the States is doing a lot of good work on supply chain risk management, on GRC, on ERM. So here's what happened. Global study a couple years ago. They asked the questions of the respondents, do you use governance, risk, compliance? Are you doing ERM? They kind of ask questions to set up categories of maturity. And you can see the categories: green, best in class, yellow, industry average, and the red are laggards. Don't ask me why they use laggards. They don't tell the respondents who are the laggards, but that's what Aberdeen does. Then they categorize those responses. And then they asked a big question down the bottom. They said, all right, you're categorized. Now, on the bottom right, is the cost of your GRC supply chain risk management practice less than the added revenue? And you could see the results: green, yellow, red. And they asked another question in the middle: is the cost of your SCRM GRC equal to added revenue? You could see the results. And then, is the cost of your SCRM GRC higher at the moment than added revenue? And you could see it pretty compelling, which basically says, how are the green companies, the companies that are best in class from an Aberdeen, how are they doing that? On the left, here's what they do. They told Aberdeen, we define a workflow from risk identification to mitigation, and probably through management of risk. And what does that mean? That means we have a predictable quality type of process. Next, they said we align the staff accountability to corporate GRC objectives. And then the final element finding they told Aberdeen is we established GRC platforms. That means they got some tools to do some heavy lifting to promote visibility and collaboration on a strategic, financial, and operational level. And the reason we show you this and the graph on the right is, here's the real aha before we move on. The real aha is the best in class told Aberdeen as a respondent that when sales goes out for prospecting to new possible clients, guess who they bring along? Not necessarily engineering, but the chief risk officer. They bring that person along in the sales call. Why? To be able to say, we have good product, good pricing, good quality, good brand, and also we have a very robust supply chain risk management process, and we feel we're less riskier than our nearest competitor as a supplier. Whoa, that is pretty heady stuff. So you're leveraging your robust risk management methodologies and process to garner what? More sales growth. That's pretty compelling to us. And with that, I'll turn it back to Jim.
Thanks, Greg. Very compelling. I hope you all found that useful to help you in your discussions with why you should be stepping up your program and supporting your risk program out there. So next we're going to talk about assessing the risks. And how do we assess the risks? Through KRIs. We always talk about KPIs, key process indicators, but here we're talking about key risk indicators. And what we have here is a graph here. So we have on the left-hand side the impact value, and on the x-axis we have time to impact. So we're going to break these out into 3 different categories. One is strategic, which of course is your executive management. The second area is tactical, which is going to be at your GM, plant manager level. And then operational is going to be your front line. So looking at the strategic, tactical, and operational level, what are the KRIs that you need to manage in your business to drive it in a positive direction? And so that having these KRIs is very, very key to setting up your program. So let's start with the operational, the feet on the street perspective. So we have 4 metrics we have identified. Of course, there's more, but let's just look at these. The number in dollars of risk responses. So are you identifying and codifying your risks? And are you identifying how many you had and what's the value of each of those risks? And cost avoidance, cost, any type of risk that you can do, assess how much did it cost you not to respond, or how much did it cost you to respond? And generally, it's time to impact and time to recovery are the response, the other metrics that you want to be measuring in concert with the dollars and the number of risk response. And then what's your risk priority number, which you would develop yourself. So that's at the operational level and the management of the risks. And then at the tactical level, which is a little bit further out, then you're getting into risk avoidance, the AltmanZ score, which we'll describe in a few minutes, which is basically an assessment of your ability to withstand bankruptcy of your company. So how well your cash flow is going. That can be assessed on a periodic basis, at least a yearly basis. You want to look at yourself and your customers, because their propensity to be able to pay, and of course your suppliers and their ability to supply. You don't want them going under either. Then we look at value at risk, and we'll go through these more in detail. Risk mitigation percentage over time, and customer margin to serve. So these are more tactical measures. And you notice the time to impact is lingering. So you're moving from leading indicators into somewhat lagging indicators, but very important all the more. And then the last category being strategic, and that has to do what Greg was just mentioning, is your revenue growth due to implementing supply chain risk and resiliency, because you are better, you're less riskier than your nearest competitor. And then you get into customer retention, satisfaction, profit degradation. Again, these are very, very large lagging indicators. One thing to think about in the tactical level, if you look at what did you plan to do versus what did you actually do, in these more laggard metrics, you can turn them into actionable items. So again, as you move from left to right, your time to impact, what you will see, you'll see it early on in your frontline processes. Tactically, you might see it a quarterly basis, and strategic, you're probably going to see it the yearly basis, unless you speed up the cadence somehow by looking at the difference between what you plan to do and you're actually doing. Greg, any other thoughts here?
No, the only thought is that these KRIs are embedded in the 90-day process. So as you get into the survey and walk through the process, you will witness, learn about, and be able to exercise many of these KRIs at the end, during, and at the end of your 90-day process.
Thanks, Greg. And with that, we're just going to look at these 3 sets of metrics from a little bit different slant. And we're going to look at, therefore, the opportunity KRI impact value is going to be greatest at the operational level, and it filters down from the operational to tactical to strategic. So it's most difficult on the strategic metrics to turn those around, where you can get quick wins, early wins, and so the opportunity to make an impact is higher on the operational level. And from a strategic level, even though the value is greater, it's going to take a longer time for you to be able to see that. So managing expectations of management is often focused on these things on the right, like cash conversion cycle. But we have to build these cadences ahead of time so that these can be met. And that's really what we're trying to explain in this slide. Greg, any other additional comments?
I thought it's a very different perspective to give to the audience in terms of quick wins, time to impact, and what you might want to do first, second, or third. And that's the gist. That is the critical success of the 90-day plan coming out of computer-generated information is, what do I do first, second, or third, just like this graph, to get the biggest impact as quickly as possible.
Excellent. And with that, I think, Greg, we're now going to have you actually define a lot of these metrics and where we've seen benefits to the bottom line.
Yeah, we'll go through this one real quick because I think we actually have this slide twice. All right. Yes. It's that important. So I just want to just go through again and say the benefits of a good SCRM program, and I would consider GRC and ERM in there as well. You got to do the operational first, the tactical, and then you can get into strategic. Think of it this way. The bottom line impact, we already gave you a couple stats. One big bottom line impact is cost reduction. You can take a look at it. Things like insurance premiums, they can be reduced. We've seen that with the insurance companies, with some of our exemplar clients. Year over year automated workflow, that's operational excellence again. That is a cost reduction. Next one is cost avoidance. We talked about that. Being effective, all right? Being more effective and quicker, because speed is life, being quicker at identifying, assessing, and mitigating a risk, that's cost avoidance relative to your nearest competitor, all right? And then so there are some financials. If you do some of the operational, tactical, and strategic KRIs, you are going to improve your working capital. You're going to have a friend as a CFO in finance. Why? Because they're going to be able to develop a cash flow forecast either for their auditors, for their stakeholders, or for themselves as well. Much better forecasting of cash flow because you're mitigating and minimizing the outbound cash to mitigate risks. And then finally, I think we have a cash conversion cycle. We'll talk about that again. We think that is a good metric of success, both for supply chain performance, which is effectiveness and efficiency, and for risk mitigation. And then we talked about the AltmanZ score. We'll get into that a little bit more at the end of the session. We think it's critical and it's free, folks. It's free. We'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. All right. We talked about market share. Most folks don't think about good supply chain risk management as I'll say, as an indicator or a methodology to grow market share. And it is. We've seen it time and time again with the exemplars. All right. So and there's two ways to do this. There's two ways to achieve market share growth using supply chain risk management program. One is what we have up here on the top, meaning a well-designed development process, in terms of new product development, can lead to many risk-related benefits, like shorter development times that market leaders rely on, to capture more market share, get into that market faster than your nearest competitor. Because why? Because we've seen it, we've learned about it in our MBA Economics and Marketing 101. The company that gets the first two companies into a market garner 80% of that market share immediately. That's why you want to do that. The second way you can do that is you can gain share from your competitor if you can respond faster than your nearest competitor during a risk crisis. So there's two ways that essentially an SCRM program can help your company grow market share. We wanted to talk to you about that. Jim, back to you.
So what we'd ask for you to do is enter in KRIs in the chat of KRIs that you have found that are appealing to you or that are interesting to you. I will go right back to our KRI summary slide and just have you look at those, type it in. Which of these KRIs is most appealing to you, or are KRIs that you've used in the past? So just go ahead and just type that in the chat, and not in the chat or in the poll everywhere. So let's see here. Make sure it's coming up. So just give you a little bit of time to enter in a phrase like time to recovery. Just try to link your words together with a dash. Somewhat of a, takes a little bit of time to do that. Just trying to get an idea of what you're using, or what of the metrics that we went through are most appealing to you. So is it time to recovery? Is it another metric that might appeal to you? The AltmanZ, possibly. A lot of people like that because it gives you a good idea of where you sit, where your customers sit, where your suppliers sit.
Yeah, while you're filling in, give you a little more insight on AltmanZ. One, it's free, but it is a predictor of bankruptcy with a 90% forecast accuracy, predicting bankruptcy for any company 12 to 15 months into the future. Who wouldn't want that as a supplier financial health dashboard? And all you need is income and balance sheet data. Now, granted, we get pushback all the time because clients tell us, well, I have a private supplier and they just don't want to share information. There are ways. We have companies inside the consortium. We call them forensic analysis, forensic accountants. They will find income and balance sheet data for that company and share it with you for a nominal fee, but you can get it if you so desire. So yeah, AltmanZ, we think it's very, very important. And the beautiful thing is it's free. It's out on Wikipedia. You can go find it. There's many, many different calculations, but it's pretty simple.
Great. Thanks for entering it in. Time to impact, time to recovery. Yeah, those are all good metrics to track your risk. And I think the main thing is putting together that measurement system. And the measurement system could be as simple as an Excel spreadsheet. It doesn't need to be a fancy IT-enabled process. Eventually, you want to get to that, but just identifying those risk events and quantifying what those are. So when you have those executive meetings, you understand what it was, how to, and then develop a proactive plan. So the next time something like that or something similar could happen, that you have a response plan and start moving in that direction. That's often the way it gets started, is just look to see what happened. So it's all those events that on the quarterly meetings that you say, oh, that'll never happen again. It's those one-off events that end up costing you margin. And we estimate in that order of $2 to $3 million a year that you're losing off the bottom line. Typically for most businesses, you're going to lose that unless you proactively mitigate against that. So, and again, the revenue growth is very important, as Greg has already discussed, but we're going to move on. We could talk forever on metrics, but thank you for participating. Some industry-based case studies. So this is where we're going to ask you to participate, but to kick it off, Greg will go through the value proposition.
Yeah, before, and we appreciate you getting engaged in the Wordle with the phrases. That's terrific. We most of the time it works, so that's very encouraging for us, for you all to get engaged. But before we get into the caselets or user feedback, which we said we would do, we wanted to share additional insights revolving around our supply chain risk and resiliency tool. So up on the top, some not so pretty statistics. Corporations across all industries, you can expect a significant supply chain risk event equating to approximately 42% of 1 year's EBITDA. Now, if you don't use EBITDA as a key performance indicator, KPI, many industries do, chemical does, CPG, EBITDA stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. This comes from McKinsey. They're doing some great work, very detailed across all industry sectors. If you can get some supply chain risk management reports from McKinsey, it's terrific reading. But think of it, almost 50% of 1 year's EBITDA can be impacted by a major supply chain risk event over the next, and they did it over time, over the next 5 years. So the tool, from a corporate transformation, the tool provides building blocks for you to survive and thrive in what? In the VUCA world. You're going to get that out of the 90-day plan. It provides coaching. We provide coaching, as you saw in the one-page placard, to lead, guide, direct, and coach you through these 5 to 8 action items to get you moving on the SCR&R continuum. Couple more stats for your business unit. Think of it. You can reduce, using the tool and good SCRM, you can reduce your yearly $3 to $4 million out of pocket risk mitigation costs. That we don't make that up. That's a finding from about a a worldwide study 4 years ago, where they captured across all industries the frequency of risk events. It goes around 11 to 12 per 12 months. So 1 a month. You can count on that. And then they codified them in terms of each financial risk event. It's like $350,000. You can do the math. $350. So over a yearly period, I don't care who you are, how small, how big, chances are you're going to experience these risk events, and you're going to have to find money out of your treasury to the tune of maybe 3 to 4 million to survive and thrive. All right. So we just wanted to share that with you. And then from the tool, you get actionable activities that are vetted from our body of knowledge, from benchmarking. We've been in this business for 12 years. We think we have a pretty good body of knowledge and intellectual property in the book and the courses and so forth. So we wanted to give you just a quick profile of some statistics and what you get out of the out of the SCR&R 90-day tool. Jim?
Great. And this is just a recap of the survey and what it involves. Again, it asks, where are you from a maturity perspective along our 5 stages, a foundational and all the way up to sustainability. Who are you across the risk perspectives, and how do you operate across those 4 perspectives also? So filling out the survey, you end up with, where are you? Are you foundational, visibility stage, foundational, predictability, sustainable? Who are you? A pragmatist, conservator, manager, maximizer? And how do you operate? Are you bureaucratic, trapped, or clannish, startup, or agile? And when you look at it through there, there's 88 different permutations of these. We have just listed some of the ones that we found are the most often from our clients that we have seen. And this is an example of, when we say a persona, you could be foundational, where you're at today. You could be pragmatic and a pragmatist organization, and bureaucratic. Or you could be, let's take one in the middle here. You could be at the visibility stage. You're a conservator and you're bureaucratic. So these are what we call personas, and that's what the AI ML algorithms do. They'll put you into one of these personas, and then from this persona, we will then use the AI ML algorithms to develop the action plan. So we have these different case studies. We have the CPG, which we covered last time, software as a service, electronics, industrials, and chemicals. I think what we'll do is we'll choose chemicals as the one. And Greg will walk us through that case study. And in that particular case study, they were at visibility, a prag conservator. So very often it's you may have a tweener, and then they're bureaucratic. So here you see that on the visibility stage, they're at the beginning of visibility and they're looking to complete visibility. They're not looking to get to sustainability. They're just looking to become to complete that stage in their program. This is a larger company, Fortune 500 company, and so they're ominous. They're global. So just getting everything visible would be a huge step in the right direction for them, and they understand that they are pragmatic and conservative. So it takes them a while to do things. So they're pretty realistic on what they can do. And with that, Greg, you want to go through some of their users' feedback?
Yep. Real quick, from a maturity point of view, and if you've been with us throughout these series, we have a 5-stage maturity model. All right. We didn't really get into it in this webinar, but the algorithms and the tool positions your as is and your to be. The as is the red on the left, and the black is where they think they would like to go. And that's fine, because every one of those major stages in the maturity model is 2 years in duration. That's by observation over the last 12 years. So what did they say? What did they say to us after they read the report and talked about it? And then we went through our first checkpoint call. What did they say? Well, we've been focused on SCRM for the past 3 to 4 years. We're still at the beginning stages of visibility. They agreed that's where they are. We are a global company spanning 160 countries, as Jim said, so they got scale and they got a lot of people, a lot of processes. We are a global company with a single instance of ERP, all good. We are not looking past the visibility stage, which in the survey is your to be state. So they felt very comfortable. That's who we are today. From in the middle, risk appetite. Again, we haven't really articulated the 4 different perspectives. We think there's only 4. Those are the colored ovals. All right. If you've been with us, we assume that you've heard us talk about the definitions, but one is pragmatist, the green is conservator, the blue is manager, and the red is maximizer. So what they say, you can see there where their organization was placed from the algorithms. We are pragmatists and conservators. We're risk averse in making decisions. What does a pragmatist mean? They wait till the very, 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 very last moment to make a decision on risk. That's a pragmatist. All right. They are procrastinators when it comes to risk. They agree. We are who we are, and we're committed to make progress, but very slow because we're big. All right. Our change in leadership approach is the passive aggressive. They're risk averse. We do not expect that this approach will change. We are reactionary. They felt very comfortable. That's who we are. We wait till the last minute. Then there's a sense of urgency, and then we change it. And we focus on execution and cost out. So they agreed that's where they seem to be. And on the operational propensity, they basically had a small box kite. If you've been with us, we always ask, what's the shape of your kite? And essentially, there's a long pole in the kite, the long length of the kite normally is the higher propensity. And they said, we are very bureaucratic and slow to make a change. Our data is siloed. That makes it very difficult to share information. We are slow to solve major issues. We operate in firefighting mode, pragmatists. When we have a problem, we wait to essentially solve it, and then we become proactive and throw all hands on deck to solve it. So just some initial user feedback from the tool in the early stages of the 90-day process. We wanted to share that with you. And finally, then, what you get is a persona of an action plan based on who you are above. So they're in visibility, they're pragmatist conservators, and they have a bureaucratic box kite. So what did they get from the algorithm and the tool? Well, they got what, 7. We try to be mindful of who they are and how they operate. Some of the action plans were, maybe you want to identify an existing risk associated with a supply chain. Pick one, map that supply chain out, start small, take a look at a small product line. We don't care if you do it manually or digitally. All right. Identify maybe the key suppliers from that map exercise, maybe calculate their AltmanZ score so that you have a dashboard. Secure a sponsor for funding. You need funding. You need an SCR&R lead. You need funding and a sponsor to give you cover. We call it executive cover and funding. Maybe continue to assess your identified risks and prioritize those risks, and essentially talk about value at risk, time to recovery, and time to impact. Transform manual risk methodologies into automated workflow, and maybe institutionalize a risk alert software solution. All right. So that is what came out of a large chemical exercise using the tool. Jim?
Great. So with that, I think we just wanted to bring you through another case study as we did the last webinar. And with that, I think we'll just wrap up here. We're getting close to the top of the hour. So just some challenges, hints, and benefits for you. Again, this needs to be aligned to your company vision. And with that vision, you need to have a focus on supply chain risk management. If that is not part of your vision, it makes it very difficult to roll this out. So your leadership needs to be aligned, and then driving that alignment across the entire organization. And that senior leadership will then drive a sponsorship for this program, and so that you have a risk appetite for taking this on, and your operational propensity will say how fast you will go given where you are at. So again, there's no right or wrong of what this is, but these are things that you need to proactively address each one of these and have that heart-to-heart on how you are going to manage getting started implementing supply chain risk management for where you are today and where do you want to go on that 21st century supply chain risk management model that we just covered. And then as far as helpful hints, and we all know communication, you just can't have too much, especially with this, because this is it's culture. You know, this is not something that hits one part of your organization. It's across your organization. So if you want to take on risk management and you stick it deep into supply chain, the likelihood of success is much lower, as we mentioned on the other slide. So you're going to have to get all your different parts of your organization aligned. And a good way to get started is with education. So an awareness of these events. So you start tracking them, start making them visible, make them part of your current meetings, your executive meetings. Risk is one of the things we used to talk about is red is good. Risk, you know, basically identifying what's going wrong and communicating and talking about how we're going to solve this or how you've solved it, and making people aware of this is very important. So it becomes part of your burning platform, because we're just throwing away money out the door because we're not proactively managing risk. And of course, then align this with your other corporate and division goals. You may have revenue goals, you have your other programs, but you can interlace risk management with these other goals also. Some of the benefits of the 90-day action plan: there is no good, bad persona. Again, embrace your persona. Don't be concerned if your company has multiple personas by division. That's very often the case, that every division has a different persona, and understanding that and those nuances will help you manage your journey. And then assign a lead in that division, let's say, to drive your program. And we all know the culture eats strategy for breakfast. So, you know, link your speed and execution to align, and then manage your personas across your supply chain risk and journey, and keep looking at your persona will change. How does your persona change? If you have a change in leadership, your persona is probably going to change in that division. So be mindful that personas may get tweaked or changed as time goes on, and refresh them. With that, Greg, you'll close us out.
Yeah, you bet. I think we'll just jump into the ask, Jim, and the get. What do we ask of your execs? Maybe 5 to 8 execs from your company fill out the 90 questions each. As we said, takes about 25, 30 minutes per. Could the executives be department heads from each discipline, like procurement, logistics, manufacturing? You can see them down there. We want and ask for different disciplines to fill out their risk perspective. We enjoy seeing the volatility and the variability. Could the executives be from the same division? We actually say start small. Take a product line, get the executives lined up for that product line, go from end to end, sales to procurement, but keep it small, 10 to 12 stock keeping units. That's what we advocate. Start small, and we'll talk about going forward. The survey discipline coverage, again, is kind of just a repeat. You know, the ideal profile is to get multiple folks, hopefully discipline and department heads across your supply chain, including finance and so forth. So you can take a look at that. What do you get? Remember, here's the get. You get a sense of where you are from the maturity model. You get a sense of essentially who you are relative to your risk appetite. We feel it's compelling and important to understand what your risk appetite is as an organization before you lead with your chin and say, we got to do this, we got to do that. You need to understand, especially if you're going to be the lead, you need to understand your company's risk appetite. What else do you get? You get a sense of how you operate. This is your operational propensity. This is your culture. We will codify that for you. What else do you get? You get an aligned 90-day action plan to survive and thrive during COVID, which is still with us, and beyond. So essentially, you get to learn how to identify, assess, mitigate, and manage your supply chain risk, because knowing sooner about a risk and acting faster than your nearest competitor, that to us is a strategic advantage. All right. What else do you get? There's a bonus. If in fact your company sends 5 or more executives into the consortium's platform, we will offer your company 1 free pass to our supply chain risk and resiliency online courses. All right, that's a value of $1,400 US, including a certificate from the Supply Chain Risk Management Consortium. So with that, we'll revisit our benefit slide one more time. You can tee it up, Jim. We talked about it. It's cost reduction, folks. It's cost avoidance. It's better working capital. And we advocate cash conversion cycle. If you're not using cash conversion cycle today as a KPI and a KRI, go find it on Wikipedia and calculate it and use it. And finally, AltmanZ score. It's a predictor, 90% forecast accuracy. All right, 12 to 15 months out. Essentially, it takes into account inventory, receivables, and payables. You can find it on Wikipedia. Who wouldn't want to know about their supplier financial health? 12 to 15 months. It's red, yellow, green. It's a heat map. And the reason we say that is we've seen the data. To change a key supplier from one type of supplier to another, it will take you many, many months, almost a year, and you will have to pay all about, in terms of total cost, anywhere from $1 to $3 million US per change out. We've seen that. It's been codified. That's why we say, think big, start small, and act fast. Jim?
Great, Greg. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Hopefully we got to your questions. If we didn't get to your questions and answer them, we'll follow up. Send us an email. Just to let you know, we'll be repeating this series starting on June the 7th and through the summer and through the fall next year. We'll be repeating these with our latest tidbits. The webinars are also available on EIG's website as well as the consortium's website, soon to be. So you can enjoy these webinars at any time. If you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to Greg and I. And again, thank you for joining us. We hope you found this valuable. We apologize for going over a couple minutes, but hopefully you enjoyed the webinar. Greg, final thoughts?
You bet. Again, we get pretty passionate about this stuff, and we went online 2 years ago because of COVID. So we've placed all our intellectual property as best we can using AI and ML to get you engaged and to move a company forward based on where you are, who you are, and how you operate. So with that, we thank you for your attendance and hope to talk to you in the future. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.